So, hey everyone, today we have Juan Pablo with us. He is a program manager at GitHub Education, where he supports the student leaders to grow and build technical communities through GitHub Campus Expert program. I myself, a GitHub Campus Expert, Juan is someone who I really admire and look up to. So, hi Juan, how are you?
Hey, thank you so much for having me. Everything is going great. It's a very sunny day here in Seattle, so making the most of like the sun and everything. But yeah, pretty excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you for joining the podcast as our first guest. It's really nice to have you here. So, Juan, do you want to introduce yourself to the audience, like what you do and this?
Sure. My name is Juan Pablo Flores. People on the streets call me Juanpa. I'm a senior program manager here at the GitHub Education team, where a lot of the work that I do is manage our student programs. So basically, I get the honor to work every day with some of the most talented students across the globe and help them build communities or grow communities on their campus by the GitHub Campus Expert program. But I also outlook some other programs that had to do with students. So yeah, my job is basically making sure that you folks have everything that you need in terms of like skills and tools before you graduate, so that when you jump into your professional life, you are more than prepared to solve any challenge that you might run into.
Yeah, and that's awesome. So, Juan, can you tell us about your background? Like, I know you were in MLH, and then you become a student researcher. Like, what is your background? How you get into GitHub as a program manager? What you were doing before that?
Yeah. Well, my story begins like lots of years ago. Now I'm feeling old now that I'm saying that, but I started organizing when I was in high school. I really liked organizing events, and it was one of the things that I pretty much like enjoyed. For me, the ability to be able to organize like these events where people could learn or people could have like a one in a lifetime experience was something that I really enjoyed. And I became very addicted to that feeling of being able to provide these spaces. So my first event was RoboCop in 2013, I think it was, which was not the robot that goes and kills people, but rather is the global competition on robotics. And
Hmm.
the competition was organized in Mexico City at that time. And I just joined as a volunteer because I just wanted like to. I think a friend of mine invited me, and I was just like, okay, let's go and see like what happens. Like I was not really into like events and stuff at that time, but it turned out that I felt in love with the whole event, and I was able to meet like some really smart people that were building like super cool robots. And um, for me, the people that I met there were, and some of them are kind of like I still in contact with, like they were like amazing. And that for me really much like, like I just like felt in love with the feeling of being able to facilitate those spaces. And after that event, I wanted to keep like organizing more and more events. And as a high school student, like my high school was uh,
Mhm.
close to a university, so I talked with the university people, and I was just like, hey, I want to be like a software engineer. And if you have like events or something that I can help out, like I'm super happy to be part of them. And there was a student community there that was named Coded. Um, so I joined Coded as just like anyone would do, and started rapidly
Mhm.
growing within the community to become at least like I think the part that everybody hates, I really kind of like enjoy, which is the sponsorship. So going out and talking with
Mm.
companies and bringing companies to the college and organizing events together, I think for me is something that I really liked. And I don't know why, but I think I was kind of like good at that time on that. And yeah, I organized a ton of like video game tournaments, and that's how I got involved with my first like really big event that I organized as a student. It was just like a League of Legends tournament on my school. Um, it was a lot of fun, and then I moved to college. And in college, I just wanted to keep organizing events and supporting the community. And there was like the student society at my college, and I joined rapidly became like vice president of the thing, and we were organizing like these massive like conferences, hackathons and stuff. So pretty much I got involved with I think I would say like a key point on my story is just like for me, attending like tech meetups in Mexico City was by far one of the breakthroughs of my career. Just being able to,
Mm.
go on a Thursday night to a co-working space, meeting like really cool people that were giving
Yeah.
amazing talks, having free food as well as a student is great. Like I'm gonna be honest. That's the
Yeah.
goal. Like being able to get involved with the community and with the people behind the meetups just created for me a network of like people that were just like doing amazing work. And through those connections, I met a friend of mine called Embrato, who he built the first boot camp in the country, and he introduced me to John Gottfried from MLH, the co-founder, and that's how
Yeah.
I got started with organizing hackathons.
Okay. So that's really nice. So that was a really nice story. So you were a GitHub Campus expert yourself, and um, now you are working in GitHub. So tell us about the work culture and some of the exciting thing that you are working on right now in GitHub. Um,
There's a lot. I think one of the things that I've been discussing a lot with other uh, student program managers, like we're kind of like five of us that are doing this kind of work, so it's a very small group. But definitely something that we agreed is that a lot of the work that we do is not very visible, but definitely like we're there like doing a ton of stuff. Like most of the
yeah.
folks would only see like the point of the iceberg, but behind the scenes there's like so many moving parts and so many things that we're running. um, right now, I think for very particular for the work that we're doing is just like working with right now working with MLH and finding ways in which we can keep supporting the league and keep that amazing relation that we have with them. I strongly believe that
Yeah.
MLH is by far one of the coolest like orgs that you can work with,
Mm.
and working with the student developer pack and finding ways in which we
Yeah.
can provide more value for students. So right now the experience
Yeah.
might be confusing because you have like hundreds of benefits, but you probably don't know how to use them. So finding or working with the student developer pack team and finding ways in which we can create like bundles and experiences for you folks to be able to use those tools in the best way possible while learning and developing your technical skills. And as a whole, it's just like maintaining the campus expert program is one of the things that I think I've learned the most out of like this whole experience is that a program is always like an unfinished project. It's just like an art piece, like you always try to improve something. There's always more things that you can add, that you can improve, and it's never like done. So being in that cycle of being able to keep improving the things and keep like going back and connecting with like the community, with people like you, Sunit, and other campus experts is for me one of the most fulfilling parts of my job, where I get to hear like from students like what are they like working on, and how can we just like better support them. So definitely there's like there's a lot of projects going on, and I'm super excited and super happy to be working with GitHub, especially because I think GitHub, out of like all the platforms, has a very privileged position within the industry where it doesn't matter if
Mm.
you're learning how to code. I don't know if you're coding like a web service or an Android app or a desktop app. GitHub
Mm.
is the platform for collaboration. Like we're not fighting with anyone, and we have like that position of like it doesn't matter what you're learning, there's something for you within GitHub that can help.
Yeah, I really like that philosophy of GitHub, that it is really open. Like you can see the whole Bitcoin project hosted in GitHub, and you can also see the TensorFlow project, which is the biggest machine learning project, also hosted there. Both communities are totally different. One wholly depends on the data, and one is really against it. But both of them are working with GitHub, and yeah. using the functionality, which is great. So as you are a GitHub Campus Expert yourself and you are managing the whole Campus Expert program, what's your advice would be for students who wants to start a tech community in their campus? Like there are lots of students who uh, ask me how they can start um, community in their university or college. And sometimes they think that it is really necessary to have a association with any program, student program, but they can start bootstrap their community, I believe. What's your take on this?
I think it's a very valid question, and even now, after like 2 years where everyone was kind of like working from home and studying from home, there's going to be a new generation of community leaders coming up next, which is very exciting because it's kind of like when there's like a fire in a forest. Like a lot of communities, unfortunately, didn't make it through the pandemic, but I think with the work that a lot of these communities have left in the past, new communities are going to be rising even more powerful and with more impact than ever before. The biggest challenge that I'm currently seeing is exactly what you mentioned, right? Like, what should I do to start a community on my campus? Because, I would say there's no real guide on how to set up a community. And
Yeah.
my biggest piece of advice for folks who are getting started is like, I see a lot of community leaders that start choosing like a platform. So the first thing that they do is just like, let's open like a Discord server and then we'll work from there. And I kind of like would recommend that really that folks who are getting started really take some time to think about the community and think about what are the things that are going to keep the community coming back to just like the events or the activities that you're going to be organizing. A lot of the work can be just like, hey, I want to build like content, and then we have like some students that are building communities around the content that they're publishing, and they're like massive communities. But definitely the first step is just like thinking of what problem or what is the thing that is going to keep the community together and coming back. Once you solve that, I think you can start thinking about everything else. But the most important thing is like defining the value that the community will provide to these people. Um, I know there's a ton of like different things, especially depending on where you're coming from, that might be challenging. I did, and I still struggle with like imposter syndrome and anxiety and all of these other things that, being in the spot there and being kind of like the one leading a community puts you in a very vulnerable spot as well. So being able to work and keep the activities and keep the community together, even when you're having like this awful anxiety of you don't know if it's going to work, if it's not going to work, if people are going to show up, if no one is going to show up. But keep like experimenting and finding ways in which you can provide value to the community is what keeps communities alive. So a lot of the things that I would recommend, especially if you're getting started with community, is gather a group of like 4 to 5 friends and start doing things together and experiment what are the things that the community around you are looking for. So you can give like a Git and GitHub workshop and see if a lot of people show up or not a lot of people. If not a lot of people show up, probably it's like a content that people are not very interested in. You can go back and plan again something that might be more valuable for students or for the community. I would say it's really hard to learn what the community is looking for without doing the work. So just like I would say take some time, plan some couple of events and see where you land with that. Last but not least is just like have a plan. A lot of times we start a community, we bring a ton of people together and then we stop kind of like showing up. So having a plan, I would recommend having like 2 to 3 months of plans ahead. Can help you sustain the community and will reduce a lot of the stress that you might run from looking to organize something for the next month or whatever. It really helps you out to reduce the stress and at the same time communicate properly with your community about what they can get from attending.
That was really insightful. And I also think that sometimes you don't need to start a community. You can be a part of a community and help them. You can also contribute in that way also, if you're um, not really in the position of starting a community. Can you tell us about the GitHub Campus Expert program? Like, what are the benefits and the application process, the things that you see in a GitHub Campus Expert?
Yeah. So the GitHub Campus Expert program is um, the let's call like the program that GitHub has built to support students that are building and growing communities. So what we're looking forward to do is like we've noticed that building communities can be very challenging, especially if you're doing it alone, right? So what we wanted to do is kind of like bring all of these students that were already building communities um, or starting to build a community together so that they can have all of the resources that they might need to organize a great community that has impact on their campus without having to worry about some of like the common problems that we see, like gathering sponsorship or getting swag or learning how to like organize a community. So the whole idea of the program is making sure that we can support a small group of students to develop those communities and make sure that they have everything that they need. So imagine, for example, like something that happened a lot of times to me is that I was building a community and I was going through like a struggle. Like, let's say no one was showing up at my events. It is really hard when you don't have someone to talk to about the struggles of your community and finding some guidance. Because then you think you're probably like the only one going through that problem. But it turns out that there are a lot of other people that are building communities going through the same problem. So just like by having that collective of students that are building the community and probably going through the same struggles as you are, it's a great way to keep also yourself motivated and finding solutions to common problems. So at the end, I think the most important thing about the Campus Expert program is not only the ability to get like support from GitHub in terms of like swag and sponsorship, but rather it's just like the knowledge that is shared within the community and the experiences that people within the community have had. So if you take like one of the biggest benefits for me is like the Campus Expert training that it's just like the collection of knowledge that we have gathered in the past 5 years on how to build communities. And especially not only how to build like a community, but rather like how can you make sure that your community transforms your campus. And it's for us like one of the things that we take the most seriously. People that take the training know that we really like to that students think about what they're doing through the training or think about the community that they want to build as they go through the training, just to provide them with a really good guide on how they can kind of like build that community and make sure that it is successful. The other part is just like that collective knowledge as well from other campus experts. And if you combine like both, you get like almost like a solution for any problem that you will have as a community leader. And then there's like everything else. So for us, like the most important thing and what we really want you folks to think about is we want you to focus on what is important on with your community. Like we want you to focus on how to keep your community engaged, how to do more activities, how to organize a hackathon, rather than looking for the resources and looking for like who's gonna pay for food. Because those are one of like that those are kind of like some challenges that you might run into as you organize your community, but rather like like we're here to make sure that your community is successful and we're here to be able to support as much as we can. And we know those are kind of like some main pain points so that you focus what is important. Just like focus on doing activities, focus on engaging with the community and helping others to grow. At the end, what we've learned through these years is that student communities are by far the best way to learn any type of skill, coding or hard and soft skills. The best way to learn from them is with a group of like-minded people that want to learn the same thing. So if you go to a hackathon, for me, hackathons were the best way that I could learn how to code something, right? Like you have 30 hours to learn something new, code it, implement it, and then probably have someone judging how cool the idea is. But if you think about hackathons in that way, there's no way that you're going to lose. Like there's always something that you're going to be learning and taking away from each of the events that you attend to.
Yeah, hackathons are really cool. When Facebook initially started, they used to conduct hackathons every weekend. So each of their developers used to team up in themselves and create new projects, and some of the Facebook features came from those projects. So hackathons really pushes you to do something in that limited time. And other than that, the global network of campus expert is really something that only this program has, GitHub Campus Expert. I know there are other programs, but what they tends to do is they took not so active members, and then the quality of the program gets demoted. And but in the campus expert program, most of the mostly insightful pupils are in this program, and you can always get guidance on almost every topic here. And personally, I got to know very much from this program, being part of this. The GitHub Campus Expert training is also something that is really something that is better than any other program, as it teaches you to designing workshops from public speaking, community management, and Git, and so much more. This is really a upskill for a student leader. So I think there are lots of people who don't know about the GitHub student pack and the benefits that you get with it, like GitHub Pro, Canva Pro, Microsoft Azure, Cloud Essays, and more. Can you tell us about the GitHub Campus Expert, GitHub student pack? GitHub student pack.
Sure. So one of the things that we've learned through the time is that one of the biggest barriers that students had for learning is just not having like any way to pay for tools or resources, right? As a student, like even it can be very hard to have access to like a credit or debit card. So the barrier of entry for a lot of the students was really high, depending on where you were coming from as well. Like there's some countries that unfortunately struggle a little bit more to get access to these resources. So what we wanted to do with the student developer pack is to lower the barrier of entry for any student from across the globe to be able to have access to those resources. And what we mean by that is like, I remember when I was at hackathons before, and I was trying like this cloud platform, and the first thing that they asked you after you sign up for the platform was a credit card, and it's just like,
Yeah.
as a student, I'm not able to like do anything with that. So it was just like a platform that I couldn't use and I couldn't learn. So the student developer pact solved that problem, and the only thing that we request students to do is to show a proof, any academic proof. So if you have like an ID from your college, or if you have a copy of the curricula that you're going through, that serves as a way to prove that you're currently a student, and it will give you free access to so like 100 or something benefits that range in all sorts of ways. Like you have, like you mentioned, right? Like you have Canva Pro if you're into designing, or if you have just like a school presentation and you don't want to fight with like making it look good, Canva is a great way. GitHub Pro that will give you access to a little extra features within the platform, and cloud services, domain names, like you name it, probably there's a tool within the student developer pack that you can use. Now, what is really interesting is like, how do you use all of those tools, right? And the problem that we saw was that there is so many like different benefits that you can get that sometimes it can be a little bit overwhelming. So we're now working on creating this new experience feature where we bundle a couple of like our partners, and then we give you kind of like some tools or some guidance on how you can use the tools. And this is very specific, for example, for the web development, web dev experience that we launched a few months ago, where we give you like Azure, and we give you Canva, and we give you Bootstrap Studio. And with that, you basically can build an entire website and even like a great web service, right? And the only thing that we added there was the web development for beginners course that the Microsoft Learn team has been working on, so that you now not only have all of the resources, but now you also have like some instructions on how to learn how to become a web developer. And the whole idea at the end is that if you want to become a developer and you're a student, no matter if you're kind of like a CS degree or engineering student, like any student across the globe would have access to all of those resources. And I think now more than ever, we've seen that a lot of people that are not related to CS or student careers are not related to a CS degree are jumping into coding. So everyone gets an opportunity to get access to the same resources without running into any of these barriers. And the other benefit that it has is that if it's not only about like the experiences but and services, but also there's a ton of learning resources that normally you would pay for, and they are for free if you request them through the student developer pack. So if you want to be like a front-end developer or a Ruby developer, I know a couple of great partners that we have that can help you out to learn how to develop on both, like for both careers, like if you want to be front end or probably like back end or full stack with JavaScript and Ruby.
Yeah, that's really nice. Like the bundling thing, you bundle up the things that are related to web development, and there is another bundle up thing I saw. There was for event management, I think, for organizing virtual events. There's another bundle which are really good, as people can um, quickly find the things that they need while organizing events. You are a student program manager in GitHub, and you
Mm.
regularly engage with student leaders globally. So, what are the common challenges that you see students face, and is there any progress that you can see in these years?
That's a very big question. I think we've seen all sort of like challenges right now. What we've found is that there are more regional challenges. So, for example, students in um, I don't know, in Africa, are some of them have some struggles to get access to infrastructure like electricity and internet. Some others might have trouble just like being able to get connected with a developer community. So every region has its own struggles. It's really hard to define like one global one, but definitely I think right now most of the people are like the normal challenges that we've seen is just like getting a job, like making sure that you learn
Yeah.
everything to or getting prepared for job interviews and getting a job on the place you wanna go. And I think there has been a lot of changes in the job interview scene. Like uh, a lot of companies are moving into more project based interviews or projects, so that
Yeah.
or yeah interviews or onboarding, so that they can prove that you have like the skills and probably the technical skills they're looking for. And I think that's like a good move. I kind of like feel that data structure and algorithms, people have learned to hack the system. And like
Yeah.
if you study like from a book on data structures and algorithm for like a year,
Mm.
you can break the
Yeah.
system and get in, right? So I think that's one of the changes that we've seen. And effectively, the other big change that we have noticed, especially after like 2 years of pandemic, is that remote work is becoming more normal. So folks that would normally get an opportunity to apply for certain roles or certain jobs now have the possibility, just because of like companies realizing that talent is not only in certain countries but rather is like globally distributed, right? So now after the pandemic, I think that we're going to see that companies will be hiring in more countries where they didn't used to hire before, just because we are very much we've learned to cope with remote work in case like your company was not into uh, work from home styles. And there's also like the other side where there's like a bunch of people that really like the office and that they want to go back and be there. But definitely having options for both is now something that is far more common, and that actually a ton of developers are looking forward to do. Like for a lot of people, it's just like makes no sense to go to an office when they can do the same job from their homes.
Uh, Yeah, but I what I see is there are companies are facing problem at hiring talents, and students are facing a problem at getting hired. So both are trying their best to get fulfill each other's need. Like companies are being more flexible with the work hours, and being locations like you can work from anywhere, and they are also getting the access to the global talent. They are not just limited to a single country. And uh, and they are mostly, I also see that interviews are getting more to the project based phase. Project based interviews are mostly conducting. And I feel that's good, because in this someone was saying that in most of the interviews, if you ask those math related questions, people memorize those things, and after some point there's no merit uh, you can filter from that process. So building a project that is showing that you can really build a software is more credible, I would say.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that very particular in that case, um, it also makes more sense. Like if you're hiring me to become a front end developer and you're asking me like data structures and algorithms, I understand where they're coming from, but probably a best way to assess if I have the experience is by doing a project that is very similar to the work that I'm going to be doing once I
Yeah.
get in the company, right? So that's like a big benefit of project based like assessments.
So there was a meme that I saw yesterday or a week earlier. So that was that I am a senior software engineer, and I am still finding a place where I will implement a binary tree. Couldn't find any.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and that's something, but I also feel that some big companies who are really into optimizing the thing, they just want the optimized version. So for from them, and lots of the things are lots of the frameworks that they use are really internal to them. So uh, your knowledge of external frameworks won't work there. So for there
Mhm.
it is valid, but I will say the development side has more opportunities, as most of the companies, when you they start, and most of the times you want to hire someone who can build a software and contribute directly to the project. And I feel that's
Yeah.
something that gives you more happiness, as you are not working on a on speeding up the search results, just you're building the search interface.
Well, I think it depends. Like, if you really
Yeah.
enjoy uh, search algorithms, like go for it. Like, totally, like do it. And I know you're gonna have like a ton of fun building one. So I think it depends a lot on like personal preference.
Hmm.
Like, if that's the thing you like, go for it.
Yeah, that's also true. um So, what do you think about contributing to open source? And I know lots of people. There are two kinds of people who do. One, they don't know about open source, or don't want to get into that. Or there are some people who don't know why they contribute to open source, but they have listened to someone, and they just blindly contribute to open source, which is good. But they also should know why you should contribute to open source. So what's your take on
Mm.
what you should contribute to open source?
Well, I think open source right now is inevitable. And what I mean by that is just like open source is everywhere. It doesn't matter, especially if you're a software developer, like there's a very high chance that you are already working in some open source like framework or consuming open source in some way. Even if you have like an Android phone, like that's like the first step, right? Or if you have like an iOS
The
device,
biggest
for sure they use
open
like a
source
ton of
is-
libraries.
Mm.
Yeah, so definitely think that it's unavoidable that you're going to interact with open source at some point as a software developer, and even just like as a non-software developer, you are probably interacting more than you would think of with open source. In terms of like contributing to open source, I do agree that it might be one of those things that a lot of people are interested of. I remember from an MLH survey, I think like 91% of like students want to contribute to open source. but a vast majority of those students do find a barrier of how to contribute to open source. So as long as we can like find better ways for folks to start contributing to open source, I think we can start helping more people to get involved. It's just like a lot of people simply don't know how to do it, right? On the other hand, I think that open source is great, and I think there's a lot of value in contributing to open source, but it is okay if it's not like for you. Like there's a lot of people who study software engineering because they just want to make money and they want to be happy and they want to work in one of those like fancy offices. So it is okay if folks don't want to essentially contribute to open source, but there's like a ton of value that you can get from contributing to a project, especially very, very related to the problem that you were talking about before, where one of the biggest problems that students have is getting experience to get a job, but they cannot get a job because they don't have the experience, right? So open source is one great way to solve that problem, because then you can start contributing to an open source, because open source project is not based on like your credentials, it's based on the value that you bring into the project. So it doesn't matter if you're a student in the US, in India, in any country, you can contribute to an open source project as long as you're providing value. So there's no barrier of entry based on credentials. So if you're a student and you want to get like a job, contributing to open source is a great way to validate that you have some expertise within a certain like programming language, framework, or technology. And I would say it's super valuable. Like we've seen even more people getting involved with open source, and from very young ages. I was talking with a student a few months ago, and we wanted to interview him because he's doing like an amazing job. And turns out that we couldn't have like an interview because he's not 18 years old, but he has been contributed to a massive amount of projects. So I think a lot of the challenges that we've seen, especially with like getting experience, can be easier if you start contributing to open source. The other side is the value that you provide to a project, like, and how that value scales. Like, it's amazing if you're able to make just like a very slight change to a project and provide a very small fix to probably a bug that someone was having. People do appreciate that a lot, and especially like open source maintainers, if you help them out in any way to keep the project alive, keep the community, and solve like struggles that the community is facing, definitely maintainers are looking forward to be there. On the other hand, and this can like a broader discussion about like open source, the communities around open source are very valuable. It's not only about the software, but it's also about the people that like the thing that makes a project successful is not the project only, but it's also the people in the community around it. So most of the times, if you join like a Discord server from a particular project, or you jump into issues and start helping out on GitHub issues, you might find like mentors that will help you get started and finding ways in which you can contribute to open source or to that project in particular. So it is kind of like a little bit more on like, I feel like we as developers suffer a lot from imposter syndrome, and we never think that we're good enough to do a thing. And you'll never know until like you start, right? And very particular open source against like other type of like projects, there's a lot of people that are very happy to have you contributing to their project because you're helping the whole community. And there's a high chance that someone will be like mentoring you and helping you out to navigate through your first like pull request or your first contribution. Something important to mention is that contributions to open source go beyond only code. So there's like a ton of different ways that do not require code to be contributing to open source.
So that's really true. And the thing that you said, that you need experience to get a job, and to get a job you need experience, that is something that really what happened to me. So I also started with open source, and I first time when I get to know that I can work on a project without having any experience. the feeling was another thing. And another thing that if you are working with someone in an open source project, and he's reviewing your code and you're submitting code daily to them, so and if you ask for a referral from him, he is way more likely to give you a referral, and he can write a better referral for you than someone you just met at LinkedIn, and you are randomly sending your resume to,
Oh
because they don't
no.
know how you code. And this is what I say to others, that uh, inst- like what is Instagram is for models, like they can showcase their talent. The GitHub is same for coders and all of the computer scientists, so they can showcase this is a
Hmm.
stage to showcase this talent. And right now GitHub is making their news feed kind of stuff really interactive, so people can start others project, fork, and also react on them. Lots of projects are getting really attractions. And right now big companies are really focusing on open source, as they're saying that this is not something that they will face any competitive disadvantage, but rather something that will
Mhm.
upskill the whole community, and people can also use the APIs, so they themselves are can get a better ecosystem around their project. So, and that was really nice. s-
I kind of like wonder, like, I think something that a lot of people, well, I'm part of that group as well, but something that we forget about, like, especially with GitHub, like GitHub, the problem that it solves is collaboration, right? And when you think about how things get done, let's go like the glasses that I have or the microphone that you have, all of these things that we use in our everyday life, most of them need some sort of collaboration to be able to be built. Like there's probably not a single person that built the whole thing on their own. The problem with software is that collaboration with software is very unique. You don't have the same mechanisms to collaborate. And I don't know if you've ever done that, but if you've ever mentored someone and you're kind of like watching their screen, you're just like, oh yeah, click here, and then you see they click in other places. It's just like it's a very frustrating process. So at the
it
end, what GitHub
happens.
does is just it solves, yeah,
Yeah.
it just like solves collaboration, and in some way by solving collaboration, we're able to build things that we couldn't have been able to build without other people.
That's true. So this is really great. So people can you can almost open source any of your project, and people can build on top of it or make a pull request, and that's so. GitHub Field Day India is just around the corner, and as I know, we will be organizing two GitHub Field Days this year. Uh, can you tell the audience about GitHub Field Day and its purpose?
Sure. So GitHub Field Day, it's an event that actually has been around for a long time, but we didn't organize a field day in the last few years until like recently. The whole idea behind GitHub Field Day is that we bring together community leaders from any specific city or region, and we have them chat together about the struggles that they are finding with their community, sharing tips and tricks that they have done to keep their community together, and even find ways in which these communities can collaborate for future events. The whole idea of the event is there's nothing technical. It's all about like communities and the work that you community leaders are doing. So it is in an unconference style, which means that you get to the event and you get like your super nice and exclusive swag for the event. And afterwards, there's like a keynote. And then the whole community comes together and decides which are some of the topics that they're interested on talking about during that day. And it's not so much like there's like someone talking in front of the audience, but rather it's just like a group of smaller discussions that the whole community interacts with and builds like together. So the whole idea of that is like there's not one single perspective, but rather you already have other community leaders in that space. Let's make the most out of like bringing all of these community together and all of these people together and share their experiences and these different perspectives so that you can have a broader perspective on how you can apply those same principles on your community. So the event in India, like we're having two of them. One of them I think is going to be in Bangalore, and the other one will be in Delhi. And the same principle applies for both events. So what we want to make sure that we do is that we bring the community together. People can, especially now after like 2 years of not seeing each other's faces for at least like in 3D. It's going to be an event that will definitely help new community leaders to set a direction of where they want to take their community to and how they can implement best practices around. So definitely it's an event that I would highly recommend. It's an event that I have a very particular love because I've seen communities being built on that event, and I've seen collaborations happen out of those events. So if you're a student community leader or you're interested in learning more, I would recommend apply. Unfortunately, like the event is very small, and that is by design. The problem with having like these massive discussions with hundreds of people is that you can't like learn as much as if you had like that conversation with a smaller group. So we have a very small number of like seats per event, and that is by design. But definitely like apply, and you have absolutely nothing to lose.
Yeah. So that will be really nice. It will get hosted in June and July. I think. So I'm
Yes.
definitely looking forward to that. So, so do you have any advice for student leaders who are building communities and doing stuff like this?
Yeah, I think the best piece of advice is um, think about what you're trying to solve, or ask your community what's the struggle that they're currently facing. Bring a group of people together, probably your friends, and start small. Make probably like a workshop or a talk where 5 to 10 people join, and then get feedback and iterate in a way that it allows you to start growing this community. At the end, the most important things of community is about sharing knowledge and experiences. So definitely when we talk about successful communities, we're not speaking about communities that have thousands of students, but rather communities that are really making an impact on their campus. And if you want to really make a change, it will require some work, but definitely super doable. So I would highly encourage like any people or any student getting started with communities to take some time, think about your community, bring people together, and start doing things together in a small scale. Then you'll see if it is the right approach, and if not, you can easily change that. That's one of the beauties of like communities. They are a super safe space for you to test and try and fail and just iterate so that you can do the best things for the people around that community. And the worst that you can do, the worst that you can lose is just like a little bit of time, but the experience that you'll get from making a community. And I'm not saying only from the technical side, but just like learning how to manage an event, how to manage a team, how to deal with anxiety, how to talk with a sponsor. I think those skills that you'll learn while you're building a community is very hard to get them any other way.
Yeah, that's awesome. Um, so that's it. Thank you for joining me, Juan. It was really awesome to have you. And if you guys like this podcast, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video. So
See you.
let's
Have a good one.